You're listening to Mind Hostage, where real people come together to talk about real issues and how they use their mind to overcome adversity. Our program is brought to you by CBD 911, distributors of the purest CBD on the planet. You can visit their website at www.mycbd911.com. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Mind Hostage. Today I'd like to introduce to you our special guest, Scott Phillips, a.k.a. Christian Chingon. Scott is a former boxer, kickboxer, college football player, SEAL team member, and children's minister. He's a Jujitsu black belt and owns and operates Scott Phillips Invincible Academy in Wiley, Texas. He's also the national president of the Christians Motorcycle Club based in Texas. Scott Phillips, thank you for being on the program today on
Yes,
Mind
sir.
Hostage. I appreciate you being here.
Yes, sir. It's my pleasure.
Now, Scott, I understand that you have a nickname that you go by. Your given name is Scott Phillips, but you go by Christian Chingon. Can you tell us
Right,
a little
right.
bit? Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Yeah, man. So I'm in a motorcycle club. I'm the national president of the Christians Motorcycle Club, and motorcycle motorcycle clubs patch holders always end up, or usually a lot of times end up with road names, and it's like a nickname, but it comes from typically some kind of incident or your background or whatever. And man, Chingon was the name that my brothers stuck me with, gave me, blessed me with, and man, it's an honor to wear it. So yeah, man, I love it. And so the Christian part on the front, my first name's not Christian, but the name of the club is Christians. So that's just how we introduce ourselves. It's like the formal introduction, Christian Chingon, Christian Doc, Christian Cash, Christian Call, Christian Dump Truck, whatever it is.
Okay.
So that's it, bro.
Now, a lot of the listeners may not know. I come from South Texas border, brother, and I know a little bit about the slang name, Mexican slang name Chingon, and way I
Yeah.
understand it means badass. Does that have anything to do with it?
Yeah, I mean, that was, that's why they stuck it with me, I mean, because of my background in, man, from the SEAL teams to fighting, and shooting and fighting and that's where it came from. So,
Okay, all right. Well, that's legit. I'm certain you earned it.
thank you. Thank you.
Well, the topic of our program on Mind Hostage is overcoming negativity and negative thoughts. And so,
Right.
by the way, congratulations on being our first guest of honor on the show.
Hey, thank you, man. That's awesome. That's a high honor for me. I appreciate it.
No, we're glad to have you. And so, I was thinking about this interview process and the questions that I'd ask. And one of the first things that came to mind is something that I used to share with my son in talking to him about overcoming adversity.
Hmm.
And one of the stories or the examples that I used was that of two brothers who grew up together in the same household,
Hmm.
same culture. They're relatively the same age, no more than a year apart. Same parents, same school, relative, same everything. So they grow up together and they join the service together, and they go off to war. Let's just
Yeah.
say Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And these two guys who shared everything in common, same blood, same background, go to the same war together. They say have the very similar experiences in the war, and they come back, and one of these brothers goes on to be a successful entrepreneur,
Yeah.
and he lives life to the fullest. He's married, has children, enjoys life, has all the things that we dream about, the American dream.
Right. Right.
The other brother, on the other hand, he takes to drinking and drugging,
Hmm.
and he can't hold a job, has a hard time coping with life in general, has a negative outlook and a negative mindset, and ends up homeless and hard to reach.
Yep.
And so, as I use that example with my son, and look at these two that share virtually everything in common with two dramatically different outcomes, makes me wonder what separates these two, what makes these two different
Right.
in the outcome. And
Yep.
so, having you on the show kind of fits right in with the story because at the introduction, we talked about you in your Frogman SEAL team experience, and that one of the most grueling trainings and missions on the planet.
Yep.
And Chingon, I have no doubt, you being just a regular man, that there were times when you went through your training that maybe you wanted to give up.
Man, there were times where and I want to be very I want to be very clear about this, because the thought of quitting, and you'll hear guys that go through the training, man, and they'll say, man, anybody that says that they don't think about quitting is a liar. And what I'm going to say is, I never considered quitting. I thought about the act of quitting, and I mean, frankly, man, I was laying there one time on the it was actually during Hell Week, and I was doing something what they call hygiene inspections, because during Hell Week, man, you just get nasty and gnarly, and so they basically put you down on this pad of concrete pretty close to the ocean. The freaking breeze is coming in off the ocean. You're freezing to death. You haven't had any sleep. It's probably, I don't know, man, Tuesday or Wednesday through the week, and they strip you down into your little your little tri-shorts, like underwear things, and they hose you down with cold water. And man, my hip flexors were cramping up so bad that they were lifting my feet up off the ground, and it felt like somebody was hitting me in the hips with a butcher knife in each leg. And the instructors were like, "Hey, we'll secure this evolution when we get a quitter." And so I'm laying there and I'm like, all right, dude, go quit. Like I'm hoping somebody goes and quits, so they'll stop the torture. And I was laying there, man, and just the idea of quitting, I'm just thinking about the idea of quitting. And I literally thought to myself, man, my mom was a single mom. My dad was a Force Recon Marine in Vietnam. My mom was a single mom. And it's funny, because I didn't think of my dad in that moment. I thought of my mom, and I thought to myself, man, if my mom was here, she wouldn't quit. That's how tough she is. And I was like, so I'll be danged if I'm going to quit,
Wow.
And so that's the only time I really thought even just simply the idea of quitting. But I'd never considered it, man. And I just wanted to be a Navy SEAL real bad. So, but I totally understand the situation that you're getting to. So anyway, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a track.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect because I think the thing that's interesting is that each of us have thoughts that go through our mind, and they may be different. They're our own thoughts that go through our mind, and I think the really and truly the moral of the story is here. How do we deal with those thoughts?
Yeah.
We all get those, and those thoughts may be based on our past experiences and how we were raised, or the voice inside our head that maybe it's the self-doubt tells us that we can't do something. And I think it's times like that when you were talking about your hip flexors were seizing up, and you were cold and miserable, and where you went was a place that you saw your mom, doing
Right.
the same thing, and then to know that she wasn't quit. So you had to go somewhere.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this, man. I'll tell you another time. I'll tell you a time I did quit that I've regretted every day of my life since. And it probably, truth be told, it probably made such an impact on me later on that it actually helped me with some of that training. Was when I was playing football in college, man. I was I was young. I was going into my second year, my I guess it was my red shirt freshman year, And man, I was a starting middle linebacker at a Division I school. I had the world right where I wanted it. And man, I thought, and I'll just be frank, I was a horrible student, man. I hated school. I'd never developed any self-discipline growing up to be good at handling academics. I was, man, if I put in the work, I made A's, but I just wasn't real big on putting in the work. And so basically, man, I just wasn't having fun because of the academic side of it, because I wasn't handling that. And so I thought I was tired of playing football, and so I quit playing ball. And I didn't consult anybody. Matter of fact, my dad read about me quitting football in the Dallas Morning News, and which I was kind of sorry on my part, but anyway, and so that's a time that was a time where I wished I would have simply made a different decision, and I wish that it would have been great if I'd have had somebody to speak into my life, to put their foot in my butt. I wish I would have had a man in my life that I respected, who was a football guy, or maybe even not, but just said, hey, look, you little punk. You think you're tired of playing ball now, but it's time just to suck it up, freaking drive on, and put his foot in my butt. And basically, as much as he could, not let me quit. And, ever since that decision, man, be honest with you, I haven't quit a whole lot of things. So,
I think that's a pretty important point that you make, and especially these days, I think we've gotten away from that type of mentorship. When you say, somebody that would have put a foot in your butt, where, we have to be so concerned with hurting people's feelings today. Right. And, I don't operate that way. I put a foot in my own butt every day, and I talk pretty rough to myself.
Yeah.
I have pretty rough self-talk, because that's the only thing that I really understand.
Right.
And so the importance of that kind of mentorship, where somebody can be real with you,
yeah.
and how important that is today in today's society, where there's so many people that don't have that.
Right, no doubt. Most people don't, man. Most young men don't have it, So
yeah, and I think they want it.
Oh, no doubt.
They no doubt need it,
yeah.
But I think they really want it.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll tell you, going back to your scenario, the two brothers, I think a lot of people don't understand the idea of accountability, man, and the fact that we are in charge of our own actions. We got to take responsibility for our own actions. And a lot of folks would listen to that story and they would go, well, man, those two brothers, even though they're brothers, their psychological makeup is this and that, and the brother that went off the deep end, man, like he was suffering from PTSD and the other one might not have been, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to tell you, man, I just think that's a bunch of crap. Here's because here's what I see. You have the exact same scenario in the civilian world with brothers who never go into combat, and they grow up under the same house, under the same circumstances, and they have the same results. One brother is a multimillionaire, the other brother is a loser, and so why is that? Well, there's no PTSD there. They come up from the same household. The difference is, now you can, obviously, man, there's, different influences come in. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is God's blessed us with a brain, a mind that is incredibly powerful. Our thoughts are real things, and we can choose to be successful. We can choose. We cannot choose what life throws at us, but we can choose how we respond to what life throws at us. And too many people have a victim mentality. And like you said, nobody kind of grabs them by the scruff and goes, look, dude, freaking quit, suck it up and drive on, man. Quit whining about stuff,
That's pretty powerful. No, I get it.
And man, when the more and more you accept the responsibility and take ownership over your life and how you're going to handle things, the more and more you think positively like that, the more and more you refuse to be a loser, the more and more you insist on being a winner, the more and more you start studying, man. There's so many resources available now for people to be successful, whether it's the internet, books. Hey, read a book, like find somebody, saddle up next to somebody who who is successful, and spend some time with them, man. And all of these principles come straight out of the Bible, but people just, we've just gotten to the point where, and I have 4 sons. I've got 4 sons, and let me tell you something. They're all going to be successful. You know why? Because I refuse to let them refuse to be successful.
There you go.
And they're going to have they're different, man. Every one of them is different, but whatever it is they do, man, they expect to win. And when things don't work out the way, and they're not perfect. Nobody's perfect, and we have to have talks and kind of regroup on things. But anyway, the bottom line is, man, you can choose to be successful. And here's what I know: anybody that anybody that disagrees with that, I don't give a crap. They're wrong. There are too many examples in life of people with no education who just refuse to not win. And man, the list is it's unending.
So. Well, one of the things, and I'm guilty of this, and until I finally had an epiphany one day, but I don't think you can talk to very many people where within the scope of the conversation, they don't make an excuse for something.
Right.
And I think we get caught up sometimes making excuses, and that's that negative self-talk. I think, where we try to excuse everything, and one of the things that I feel like is important about that is while we're making excuses, we're blaming our situation or problems on something or someone else, and that's a failure of our accepting responsibility for our own actions and our own behaviors and our own situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, I think if we can get away from making excuses, and I think that's where that mentor comes in, where they don't accept an excuse.
Yeah, man. Now I'm in favor of, speaking to people in a way where they'll hear it. You know what I mean? Like some folks, man, you can just be brutally direct. Other folks, using a little verbal jujitsu, is also beneficial. But as a matter of fact, I was around a guy this weekend, and man, I love the dude. Something happened, and it was 100% his fault. And I heard him the night before making excuses, and I was like, hey, man. He goes, yeah. He's like, H and gone. I'm sure you heard what happened last night. And he was like, yeah. And he goes, well, here's what. And I said, hold on, stop. Did you do it? Well, yeah. Did you not take the safety? Or I said, well, I'll tell you, he had an AD with his pistol. All right. He had an accidental discharge. It wasn't his gun. It was somebody else's. A guy handed him the gun, told him it was clear, and he pointed it at the ground, pulled the trigger, and the gun went off. Bang, shoot it, shot it. Hey, hey, man, he pointed in a safe direction. Yeah, nobody got hurt. Blah, blah, blah. Embarrassed him, obviously, But he was trying to skirt the responsibility. And he was like, and we didn't know the guy that handed him the gun. It was just another guy from down the campsite. And so the next morning, he's trying to talk to me about it. And I love the guy, man. I hope one day he's in our club. But anyway, he goes, he's like, well, here's what happened. He goes, man, the guy gives me the gun. I said, stop. I said, did you pull the trigger? Well, I said, it's yes or no. It's a yes or no answer. Yes, sir. I said, okay. Who did not make sure the gun was unloaded before you pulled the trigger? Me. Whose fault was it? Me. All right. Good. And then I was like, hey, but good job not shooting your foot, pointing in the direction. But, it was just, and he really, subconsciously, he was trying to deflect the responsibility, but hey, man, that was a situation. And this is a rough, guy that I could speak to. And man, he's going to remember that for the rest of his life. I promise you, if there's anybody on the planet who will never have another AD, it'll be that guy.
Well, the only way that we can really improve and get better is to accept that responsibility, to own it, and to go,
Right,
what? Yeah, I screwed
right.
up,
Abs-
and I need to figure out how not to screw up again or not screw up as bad the next time.
Absolutely, man. I've made thousands of mistakes, brother, and yeah, you got to man up and accept responsibility.
Well, hey, in addition to your SEAL team training, man, you also own a jiu-jitsu studio. It looks like you have some experience as a kickboxer and a boxer and a martial artist, and you trained under one of the greatest
Yeah.
of all time in jiu-jitsu, one of the Gracies. Tell
Uh,
me a little bit about your fighting background.
Man, so I grew up fighting. I grew up in it was a small town back then, Wiley, Texas, and I was never a bully, but I was always I was always a willing participant. I'll put it like that. If anybody ever wanted to get down, so I grew up doing that, man, and I got into the martial arts when I was young, and I boxed competitively. I kickboxed competitively. And I was always looking for the holy grail in combat, man. I always wanted to be the best I could be. So whenever I finished, when I thought I was tired of playing football, I looked around and I considered myself to be a warrior. So I looked around where the best warriors on earth were, and I talked to a bunch of the different branches in the military, and I settled on the SEAL teams, and then, man, God bless me, I made it through the training. I got stationed in Hawaii. And this was around the time when the first Ultimate Fighting Championship came on, and Hoist Gracie dismantled everybody, a little skinny Brazilian guy.
You're dating
Well,
yourself, brother.
yeah, I know. Oh, I know. And so when I was in high school, man, I remember reading about those guys and about how they had an open challenge for anybody to go to their gym and compete, fight. And and years later, I saw the videos, and they were always very gentle with whipping these guys' butts. And they fought Olympic wrestlers, man. They fought world champion kickboxers. They fought professional boxers. They fought everybody, and they easily whipped everybody because nobody knew jujitsu. And when you pitted jujitsu versus wrestling, jujitsu versus karate, jujitsu versus kung fu, jujitsu versus boxing versus kickboxing, whatever, jiu-jitsu won. And so I got stationed in Hawaii, and I wanted to go to a team on the East Coast, but they sent my entire class to Hawaii. And man, it was a blessing because Helson Gracie, who is the older brother of Hoist Gracie. Hoist is the one that fought in the first UFCs. Helson was his coach back then in the first few UFCs. Helson lived in Hawaii. And there was already a few guys at my team training with him. And so I showed up, and they're like, "Hey, man, you like to fight?" I'm like, "Yeah, I like to fight." And so I started training with him. And, that was 25 years ago, and I've trained consistently ever since. He's the guy that I got my black belt from. I was very fortunate to travel to Brazil with him, and his first competition team that he took to Brazil, I was part of that. We went over there, man, and had a blast. And so that's how I got into jiu-jitsu originally. Then when I got back here, pretty much when I got back here, there were no jiu-jitsu academies close to me, so I started teaching just different guys. And man, and I've taught probably for the last 15 years, and now I own an academy and full-time. That's what I do full-time. We have church there on the weekend, so I'm also one of the pastors at the church. But yeah, man, we're running jiu-jitsu classes and Muay Thai classes 6 days a week, multiple classes per day, training people from 5 years old to I think our oldest student is 72.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been a huge blessing.
Well, I'd like to switch gears right there, man, because I want to try to break down some of these stereotypes. Number one, of warrior men,
Mm-hmm.
and men with tattoos and beards and bikers. And I get it. That's my background.
Yeah.
and break
Yeah.
down some stereotypes, because one of the things that I know about you is that you're a children's minister, and you also teach a lot of children in your jujitsu
Yeah.
studio, man. And I think that's an amazing thing. I thank you for giving back. But tell me a little bit about your desire to work with children. I mean, here you are, accomplished martial artist. You grew up fighting, with that warrior mentality. You went through the frog team. I'm sure you've experienced many things that you probably rather not talk about. And here you are giving back to the kids. Tell me a little bit about that.
I'll be honest with you. So when when I started raising my boys, God just gave me a heart for kids. My sons were awesome. I loved them. I mean, any father, was going to tell you they love their boys, but man, they were just such a blessing, man. God's blessed us. My wife and I and the boys are incredible. And so I was very fortunate. I got to coach them in Little League, and I actually coached two of my sons all the way up through varsity football and basketball. And along the way, God just He put a burden on my heart for the lack of godly, masculine, not male, but masculine leadership that so many kids lack. If you go to a whole lot of churches, you see, and in the children's ministry, it's primarily women teaching the kids. And if you go to schools, it's primarily women teaching the kids. And if you go to private schools, it's primarily women teaching the kids. And so, which, man, I love them a lot. Those women are awesome. If it weren't for them, the churches, would lack a lot of leadership, man, with them. And so so I started praying about, and I felt God calling me into ministry. Now, I felt like my ministry was going to be coaching high school varsity football, and that would be my ministry. That would be how I would be able to reach out to kids, boys in particular. And then along the way, man, God got right in the middle of it. And the church I was attending was the biggest church out here, and they were looking for a children's pastor. And the current children's minister, she was also the preschool minister, and I'd known her for years. She just, I was over at the church one day, and she said, "Hey, man, we need a children's pastor. Have you thought about it?" And I was like, "What? What are you talking about, Sam?" I'm like, "You know who you're like me? Like you realize who you're talking to, right?" And she's like, "Yeah." She said, "I think you'd be great." And I said, "Well," and I didn't even know what she did. I had kids in the children's ministry, but I didn't even know what she really did, And so I said, "Well, hey, send me whatever." And I researched it a little bit, and I talked to the pastor. And I told him I would pray about it, and I prayed about it, and I prayed for about a week, and I just didn't get any. I didn't get any clarification. I didn't get an answer from God. And at the time, my mom was going through some cancer, so I thought she was going to come in. So I was kind of nervous about the income. I knew I was going to have to, take a big pay cut. And I told the pastor, I was like, "Man, I don't think that's going to be my gig." And he was like, "Well, hey, keep praying about it." And he said, "And when you pray, really," he goes, "like, really pray about it and really listen, So I prayed for about another week. And I was in a hotel room. I was doing some traveling. I was in a hotel room, and I was reading, and God just very clearly made me understand that if I wanted to be a masculine, a godly influence for kids, that being a children's pastor, that this was the best opportunity that I could possibly get. And so I went back and I said, "Hey, I'll put my resume in." And it was kind of funny because I knew all the guys on the search team, and they were in the middle of a nationwide search. They had people much more qualified theoretically. And one of the guys on the search team called me, and he was like, "Hey, man," he was like, I got your resume for this children's pastor position. Like, is this a joke?" And I said, "No, man." I said, "No, it's not a joke." And he was like, "Well, I'm looking at your resume, and it's like killing. Now I want to be a children's pastor." And I said, "Well, hey," and I told him, I said, "Well, hey, have you ever looked at any of the quote unquote resumes of the men in the Bible?"
Right.
And he was like, "Good point, man.
Mm-hmm.
Look, bro, I don't, I said, understand this. I'm praying for God to put His man in that role because I still had kids in the children's ministry, and if I wasn't that guy, I wanted Him to put God's man in that position." And man, that's and basically the Holy Spirit got involved. They didn't go with the guy that they were really focusing in on. Man, the Holy Spirit got involved. Some things came to light, and then man, they hired me. So I did that for a while until I moved into a different position within that church, and and then God moved us out of that church into Invincible Academy. And now, man, I get to spend, basically my whole life revolves around training and discipling and mentoring kids and adults. We got a great adult program as well. So,
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I think I don't know about you. I try to give back. Made a lot of mistakes, and I've tried to learn from those mistakes, and I really work to try to give back and do God's will. Whenever possible.
right on, right on. And you talk about the stereotypes and all that. Man, here's the deal. Uh, Society is kind of the one that's twisted the stereotypes because if you look, there's a passage in the Bible where Jesus is talking about John the Baptist, and John the Baptist was in. He actually sent his guys to go out and check out Jesus, and Jesus points out the fact that he says, "Hey, look, man, when you came out in the wilderness to see a prophet, did you come out to find a weakling?" And he said, "Did you come out to find somebody living in wearing fancy clothes?" And Jesus said, "No, you didn't." He said, The weak people, and people that wear fancy clothes." He was like, they live in king's palaces." They said, "You came out to see a prophet." And he said, "And of the people that have ever been born, there is none greater than John the Baptist." And John the Baptist, everybody knows, was a wild man. Like he was a wilderness guy. He looked. If you took one of our guys, I mean, like I got dudes in my club that if you took their cut off, put it on John the Baptist, he would look like dudes in our club. And it just struck me that's who Jesus pointed out as no other man born of a woman is as great as John the Baptist, this rough, straight shooting, guy from the wilderness. And if you look at, and I don't know if you've been to Israel, or if you look at all the men in the Bible, man, they were rough dudes. Jesus was the hardest cat that's ever walked the planet. All his disciples were rough guys. David, who said, the Lord said he's a man after my own heart, man. He was a freaking warrior. He was a rough dude. And so the idea that Christians are only clean cut, very, straight kind of nice guys is just inaccurate. Now, are a lot of Christians that way? Absolutely, man. Some of my best friends are like that. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not
Right.
I'm not talking about false masculinity. I'm not talking about being bullies or trying to be a tough guy. I'm just talking about authenticity. I
Right.
mean, it is it is what it is. And so the stereotype, man, look, so many people want to throw stereotypes out and they want to do this, and it's all just an excuse. It's an excuse for them not to take accountability for their own action. Again,
Man, I've sat amongst warriors and amongst men and some of the roughest cats on this planet, and we've shared tears together,
yeah,
brother.
yeah, 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 yeah. So
Just to embrace that human
yeah,
spirit, man, and real people, and so well, hey, as we wrap this up, man, we talked about quite a few really interesting topics here, man. But I want you to just share with us as we prepare to end this show. One of the most important things you think in maintaining a positive mindset and getting through, everyday adversity?
I'll tell you, a couple of things, man. Obviously, I'm gonna tell people, that if they don't have a relationship with the Lord, I would hope and pray for them that they would seek somebody out that can help them with that. Okay, so that's first and foremost, obviously. As far as practical application and some action steps, the first thing I would do, I would tell everybody out there that if you want to be successful in life, there's a book and it's called Think and Grow Rich.
I've got it, brother. I'm reading it now.
Perfect. It's by Napoleon Hill. And look, just trust me, trust JoJo, trust us. Just read the book. Now, how you apply it, whether it's a business, it's not talking about thinking and growing rich financially exclusively. It's talking about growing rich in relationships and success and achievements and your personal contentment. But frankly, it's got all that. It's got the game plan in there. It tells you it talks about goal setting. It talks about self-talk, auto-suggestion. It talks about faith. It talks about visualization. It talks about the leadership qualities, the practical things that you have to do from a day-to-day basis to be successful, to stay positive. And so that would be the second thing. So a relationship with the Lord, start reading that book. And then the third thing is this. And this just is what it is. If you want to be mentally tough, well, then just be tough. If you want to get in shape, then get in shape. If you want to be successful, well, then start becoming successful. It's not rocket science. Start doing what it takes to get where you want to be. Don't let the world keep you from accomplishing the goals that you have. God gave you a brain and a mind that will allow you to accomplish whatever you want to accomplish in life. But the bottom line is you have to decide to do it. The resources are out there. If you decide, people used to ask me all the time, hey man, what do you have to do to be a Navy SEAL? How come some guys quit and how come some guys don't? And I tell them, I was like, if you want to be a Navy SEAL, you got to want to be a Navy SEAL more than you want to breathe, because there's going to be a time where you have to choose between the two. And every man who's ever quit SEAL training, every man quit because they did not want to be a Navy SEAL bad enough. It's that simple. It's that simple. There's no magic formula, man. You just don't quit. You just keep driving on. And every person out there listening to this has the capability to be successful, but they got to choose to do it. They got to take responsibility for their own actions, and they've just got to put it into action.
That's pretty solid, brother. I'm gonna go back. That's good advice. But don't stop at that one book. I think.
No.
To add to that, one of the important things of being successful is to continuously work on self-development, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Find your spiritual time. Read a book, put positive things in your mind, and I equate that to gardening. But wasn't very good at gardening. But I think you talk about this in the Bible too. But I had about a 20 by 40 foot patch out in my backyard. I was excited, man. I wanted to get out there and grow some vegetables, and I did really good at first. I went out there and made my rows and tilled my garden, and it was pretty, and they were coming up, and I watered it, and pretty soon the weeds started creeping in. And man, I'd get out there and pull weeds, and I'd get busy and come out there, and there were more weeds, and I'd get out there and pull a few and come back, and before I knew it, that the whole garden was consumed with weeds. And finally, I just got out there with my weed eater, and I went down to the dirt, and try to salvage, try to get a crop.
Yeah.
But that I think that's true of everyday life and negativity and how it creeps into our mind. You talked about putting in the work, and I think that's where a lot of people miss it. Is you go talk to people, go to see a therapist, and I think that's important. You can go talk to your pastor, you can go, but nobody can fix the problem. They can guide you in the right direction. They can listen to you, but you have to put in the work. When a negative thought or a doubt or a fear or one of those human emotions creeps in like a weed, you have to pluck it out. And
Absolutely.
sometimes it's a grind.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think, like you said, if you want it bad enough, and
yeah,
you're willing to put in the grind and put in the work, you can do it.
yeah, no doubt. Absolutely.
So, well, Chingon, I thank you so much for coming on today. We're exceeding our time. I think we could sit here and talk all day, and I hope we can do this again soon.
Absolutely.
But I appreciate you, brother, and I have no doubt that you spoke to some of our listeners. If you'd like to know more about Scott, you can look him up under Christian's Motorcycle Club on Facebook, or at Scott Phillips Invincible Academy at invincibleacademy.com. We'd like to remind you to comment, like, share, subscribe our podcast. You can reach us at mindhostage@gmail.com, and you can visit our website at www.mindhostage.com. Thanks for tuning in, and have a great day.